Almost every project that I go on will typically tell me that they have a site-specific safety plan. But do they really? Often what I find is that the site-specific plan is nothing more than the company's safety manual with a new cover page on it that has the project address, the management contact info, and maybe a list of the nearest medical facilities. It's a start, I guess, but it's not really what I would call a site-specific plan. Let's take a few minutes to look at the differences and see how a site-specific safety plan can have a positive impact on not only safety, but productivity and quality as well. This is construction. Every site is different. Every site will present a new and unique combination of site conditions and construction challenges. This is why most construction companies design their safety manuals to be a set of rules for dealing with hazards that we commonly face on projects. These rules are often presented as a list of options for mitigating a safety or health hazard, leaving it up to the field teams to choose the option that best suits the conditions that they face on any particular project. Fall protection is a good example. A typical statement in a company safety manual will say something like, personnel working more than 6 feet above the ground near unprotected sides and edges must be protected by using guardrails, nets, or personal fall arrest systems. The use of spotters or flag lines is not permitted. This is great for a safety manual. It identifies the hazardous condition and it lists the rules required to mitigate that hazard. It also goes beyond just restating the regulation word for word by listing a couple of things that are not acceptable means of hazard mitigation on this company's projects. But it's hardly site specific. What I want to see is, what method are we going to use on this site? Now let's differentiate between a couple of things here because there are two ways to do this. One is through the use of a pre-task plan or PTP, and the other is through the use of a site-specific plan. Now, most projects will end up meeting both of these methods. A PTP is a short-term document, typically developed by a field crew to address a very specific short-term task. I'll talk about these in another episode of Safety Shorts. For now, let's focus on site-specific plans, which are something that should be developed by the general contractor to control the method and flow of work on a specific job site in order to address safety, productivity, and quality. Now, when I have one, I always like to use a real-world example, and I have a perfect one here. After finishing construction on a large tilt-up concrete distribution warehouse, and before starting the next project, which was going to be similar but much larger, the general contractor called me in to help them take what we had learned from the finished project to develop a site-specific plan for the upcoming project. Our intent was to do this early in pre-construction, before procurement even started, and you'll see why as I lay out this example. Again, this was a large warehouse, about 1 million square feet or 93,000 square meters. It had high bay ceilings, meaning accessing the roof meant a ladder climb of about 24 feet or over 7 meters. And the schedule was shaping up to look like we were going to have a lot of people from several different trades working up on the roof throughout the hottest months of the summer. We recognized that the approach we took on the last project, which was sort of to leave it to the trades to fend for themselves in terms of accessing the roof and providing fall protection, was not the most effective way. It left gaps in safety and it probably increased costs and did not help productivity. Plus, having to climb that tall ladder to inspect the roof probably resulted in the superintendent not going up there to oversee quality as much as they should have. So we designed a site-specific plan for accessing and working up on the roof. We identified several areas where we would provide stair tower access to the roof and said this would be the only means of access permitted without written authorization from the superintendent. We identified the areas where the parapet walls were not tall enough to be considered guardrails because they were staggered in height. And then we added a requirement on the plans to add threaded inserts on the inside of the tilt panels and called for the installation of wire guardrails as these panels were erected. We made sure to put these items in the concrete contractor's scope of work. We identified the location of several shade structure pop-ups that would be used as break and water stations and said that these would be maintained by us, the general contractor. And we added a requirement for the use of a moving section of portable guardrails to be erected and maintained during leading edge construction work and assigned that to the framing contractor's scope of work. Now we had what was shaping up to be a very site-specific safety plan. Yes, it complied with our safety manual, but it complied by stating very specifically how things would be handled on this project and who was responsible for each element. Doing this before procurement meant that I could ensure that my trades, like the roofers, the mechanical contractor, and the skylight contractor, knew that they did not have to provide their own access or their own fall protection up on the roof. Construction was safer and more productive because getting up and down was much easier on wide stairs, and shade provided on the roof meant crews didn't have to go down to the ground to take a break. This is just one example of how a site-specific safety plan can be used to benefit safety, productivity, and quality. What other examples can you come up with on your projects?